Is going to talk about diet quality. Again, this has to do with the warrior diet, Ori Hofmekler's warrior diet, but this part actually has more to do with calorie restriction in general. And I'm going to get back into the warrior diet lifestyle when I talk about exercise, why I don't support his concept of controlled fatigue training, what controlled fatigue training is, like what his idea is, or what my interpretation of it is. I might be wrong. But first, I want to get back into some of these foods in the Okinawan diet that have caloric restriction, they mimic caloric restriction. So the first one is the sweet potato. Okay. So sweet potatoes have been available in Okinawa since the 1600s. And the sweet potato has formed the bulk of the Okinawan diet, accounting for over half of caloric intake. The sweet potato is a plant from, the Convolucus, whatever family. The edible tuberous root is long and tapered, appears most commonly in yellow, purple, violet, red, and orange colors. The leaves and shoots are eaten as greens and in miso soup. Sweet potatoes consumed in Okinawa have several interesting nutritional characteristics that may have anti-aging effects. One such characteristic is the protein called sporamen. Sporamen is the major storage protein composing over 80% of the total protein in the edible tuberous root, and exhibits biological functions that also include environmental defense and free radical inhibitory and scavenging activity. Sporamen is expressed systematically in response to stress, such as wounding, environmental extremes, injury, pest, and toxin defense. In a recent study, the phytonutrient concentrations and gene expression profiles were investigated in yellow, white, and purple sweet potatoes. Purple sweet potatoes were found to have the highest total phenolic content. The major phenolic was 5-chlorogenic acid. Others include quercetin, rutinoside, camphoryl, rutinoside, patinonidin, rutinoside 3-glucoside. The most common carotenoids were violaxanthin and lutein. Expression of most phenylpropanoid and carotenoid structural genes decreased during development and resulted in lower phytonutrient content in mature versus immature sweet potatoes, meaning baby sweet potatoes. Other common phytonutrients which vary by type of sweet potato include phenolic acids, flavonols, anthocyanins, and carotenoids. Marine-based carotenoid-rich foods. Marine-based carotenoid-rich carotenoid sources, such as seaweed, algae, and kelp, are very low in caloric density, protein-rich, nutrient-dense, with ample carotenoids, folate, magnesium, iron, calcium, iodine, and several have been shown to act as calorie restriction mimetics. The compounds characteristic of some marine foods, such as seaweed, include bioactive phytochemicals not present in land-based plants, such as xanthophyle, fucoxanthin, the polysaccharide fucoinidin, astaxanthin, and fluorotannins. Fucoxanthin is a carotenoid pigment derived from chloroplasts of brown algae and most other brown-green kelp plankton, which are common in the Okinawan diet and found in Undaria pinnatifida, or wakame, hijikia, fusiformis hijiki, laminaria japonica. And you can find these at, if you go to the Korean supermarket, I do a lot of my shopping at H Mart, you can find all these types of seaweed there. Sagrasum fulvellum, among other marine foods. Recent work shows that fucoxanthin increases expression of uncoupling protein 1, UCP1, in white adipose fat, mitochondria in the abdomen, increasing WAT oxidation of fatty acids and heat production. Other studies have found antioxidant, anti-carcinogenic, anti-diabetic, and anti-photoaging properties. Studies of animal models show multiple beneficial effects on metabolism, including reduction of blood glucose and insulin and attenuation of weight gain, thereby holding promise as a potential dietary intervention for metabolic syndrome and related disorders. Fucoidan is another marine-based carotenoid with interesting health properties. It is a sulfated polysaccharide found in popular Okinawan marine plant foods, mainly the seaweeds kombu, wakame, mozuku, and hajiki. Research literature on fucoindins tripled between 2000 and 2010 and continues to grow. Fucoidan has several anti-carcinogenic properties and that range from direct cytotoxic effects on cancer cells to inhibition of carcinogenesis through modulation of apoptosis, angiogenesis, local invasion, and metastases. Fucoidan also appears important in insulin signaling and major biological pathway in aging. For example, a recent study of fucoidan extracted from Saccharina japonica was administered to normal and diabetic rodents, and its effects on glycemia, insulin, and serum lipid levels were evaluated. The study demonstrated that fucoidan had considerable hypoglycemic effects, meaning it lowered blood sugar by stimulating pancreatic release of insulin and or by reducing insulin metabolism. Lipid profile also improved in the rodents treated with the fucoidan. And another study of rodents, mice that were fed a high-fat diet for 5 weeks with or without fucoidan showed significant physiological differences. The fucoidan supplemented group had significantly decreased weight gain and less liver and epidermal fat mass compared with the non-supplemented group. The mice supplemented with fucoidan showed significantly reduced triglyceride, total cholesterol, and low-density lipoprotein levels in the plasma, liver status. Okay, the third marine carotenoid common in the Okinawan diet is astaxanthin and xanthophyll carotenoid. It has powerful, broad-ranging antioxidative properties and originates mainly from microalgae, but also is found in fungi and complex plants. Higher-order marine life that feed on plant sources accumulate astaxanthin, such as crustaceans and reddish-colored fish, such as salmon. As such, it makes its way into the Okinawan diet through widespread means. Evidence suggests that astaxanthin has promise for modulating aging through activation of insulin signaling pathway and upregulation of FOXO3 gene. A recent review highlights promising astaxanthin-related clinical trials in model organisms and humans for aging-related outcomes. Turmeric, which is a spice, obviously, originally from India. Turmeric is from the rhizome, which means the root of Curcuma longa, and belongs to the ginger family. Turmeric was likely brought to the Ryukyu Kingdom, which means Okinawa, through the spice trade in which the Ryukyu Kingdom was an avid participant. Curcumin, one of the major active compounds, is a phenolitic compound concentrated in the roots of Curcuma longa and has been extensively studied for its numerous biological activities, including anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and anti-cancer properties. The anti-inflammatory capacity of curcumin correlates with a reduction of the activity of nuclear transcript, blah, 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 the roundworm C. elegans, blah, blah. Epidemiological studies and clinical trials suggest that curcumin inhibits pathological processes. Clinical implications. Should we restrict our calories? Should we consume CR mimetics? First, the cumulative evidence of over 70 years of CR research demonstrates that CR is an ancient and important survival mechanism which appeared early in the evolution of eukaryotes. It is conserved across the phylogenetic scale from yeast to mammals So every multicellular animal has this ability to benefit from calorie restriction, it seems. Second, studies in progress with non-human primates on calorie restriction regimes show some support for the model organism data. Third, short-term and longer-term studies of humans under a true calorie restriction paradigm have shown dramatic changes in physiology and metabolic shifts consistent with model organisms. Fourth, Wilcox is, of course, one of the brothers that developed the Okinawan protocol, demonstrated that older Okinawans ate a calorie restriction-like diet and exhibit a calorie restriction-like phenotype. Even with their mild calorie restriction-like diet, they only consumed this diet for up to half their lives, since they transitioned to positive energy balance and higher BMIs from the 1960s to present, yet older Okinawans have gained an additional 6% survival time, versus other Japanese, and an additional 20% survival time versus Americans. Conclusion: the traditional diet of the Okinawans, who by many measures are the world's longest lived and healthiest people, provides many clues for research on the nutritional aspects of healthy aging and longevity. Two topics that are receiving increasing attention are caloric restriction and functional foods with calorie restriction mimetic properties. We need to learn much more about calorie restriction and calorie restriction mimetics before health recommendations can be made. I don't buy that, but that's fine if they want to say that. Which is funny because the Wilcox brothers created the Okinawan protocol. Okay. In particular, there may be ages where such interventions might be ineffective or result in adverse outcomes, such as before adulthood or in the elderly years. Nevertheless, the Okinawans demonstrate that consuming a plant-rich diet, lean protein sources, and healthy fats appears to be a prudent choice, at least in adulthood. So keep that in mind. The quality of the diet, a plant-rich, lean protein, healthy fat diet, appears to be a prudent choice, okay? So consuming more nutrient-dense but calorie-poor vegetables, fruits, and legumes will not only help most of us achieve a healthy weight, but increase our intake of health-enhancing phytonutrients. Understanding more about these nutritional phenomena, their biological pathways, their relevance to human health may lead to interventions that enable more of us to live longer, healthier, and more productive lives. Key points: older Okinawans consume a diet consistent with mild caloric restriction and rich in functional foods with calorie restriction mimetic properties, especially sweet potatoes, turmeric, and marine-based carotenoid-rich foods. Older cohorts of Okinawans exhibit calorie restriction-like phenotypes, physically smaller, physiologically healthier, less age-related disease, longer health span, and longer average and maximum lifespan. The link between calorie restriction mimetic foods, and good health of the Okinawans is supported by epidemiological and demographic data. Novel research is identifying biological pathways through which calorie restriction and calorie restriction mimetics act in model organisms of aging and humans. One of the most promising pathways is the insulin IGF-1 signaling pathway. FOXO3 is a major checkpoint gene in the pathway and is one of the only two genes consistently replicated for its effects on human longevity. This gene acts as a transcription factor. Acknowledgements, blah, blah, blah. Okay, moving on. Now, alpha-lipoic acid, or lipoic acid, is a calorie restriction mimetic, okay? It helps to lower blood sugar. So lipoic acid rejuvenates rejuvenates aged intestinal stem cells by preventing age-associated endosome reduction. So the age-associated decline of adult stem cell function is closely related to the decline in tissue function and age-related diseases. However, the underlying mechanisms that ultimately lead to the observed functional decline of stem cells, the study investigated blah, 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 which includes okay, the study reports that alpha-lipoic acid reverses age-associated intestinal stem cell dysfunction, blah, blah, blah. by promoting the activation of endocytosis autophagy network, which decreases in aged intestinal stem cells. Moreover, this study suggests that alpha-lipoic acid may be used as a safe and effective anti-aging compound for the treatment of intestinal stem cell dysfunction-related diseases and for the promotion of healthy aging in humans. So that's pretty interesting. And if we continue, alpha-lipoic acid administration rejuvenates aged intestinal stem cells. Activation of autophagy has been linked to anti-aging in diverse model systems. Whether alpha-lipoic acid reverses aged intestinal stem cells through an autophagy-mediated mechanism to visualize the autophagy activity, blah, blah, blah. ALL administration significantly increased autophagy activity. Moreover, distribution of alpha-lipoic acid synthesis by fruit flies, yada yada. Activation of autophagy in aged fruit flies by feeding with spermidine, da da. Alpha-lipoic administration, alpha-lipoic acid administration could not decrease the effect of da da. Okay. Next, alpha-lipoic autophagy on the digestion improvement by okay. As expected, activation of autophagy process in the aged intestinal stem cells via overexpression of forced expression it rejuvenates intestinal stem cells by modulating endocytosis. The ubiquitous but often overlooked endogenous small molecule alpha-lipoic acid remained almost completely unexplored in the context of stem cell-mediated tissue degeneration and organismal aging. This study found a significant downregulation of the expression of alpha-lipoic acid synthetase in aged intestinal stem cells, blah, 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 okay. Over the past decade, studies on alpha-lipoic acid were mostly performed with the focus on its antioxidation function. And this is what's important. People don't understand, okay, like vitamin C. Vitamin C is a very powerful antioxidant. However, it's also used to make collagen. It's also used to help with white blood cells. It's also, there's a lot of things that, to make interferon. There's a lot of things that vitamin C does that have very little or no relation to its antioxidation qualities. Same is true with alpha-lipoic acid. Same is true with vitamin D. Same is true with a lot of these. You have to understand, these are nutrients that the body needs. However, other functions of alpha-lipoic acid, especially in the context of stem cell regulation, have been largely neglected. In fact, several previous studies provided evidence that alpha-lipoic acid also participates in the activation of signaling pathways and the regulation of gene transcription. The present study represents a first step and indicates that alpha-lipoic acid plays an important role in the prevention of the functional decline of stem cells in response to aging. More importantly, this study showed that alpha-lipoic acid inhibits intestinal stem cells overproliferation, not by its ability to eliminate radical oxygen species, but by promoting the activity of endocytosis and autophagy network. Endocytosis refers to the process of active transportation of extracellular material into cells via the membrane. Over the recent decades, the abundant research contributed to an increased understanding of endocytosis process. This process has been shown to regulate multiple important cellular functions, such as nutrient uptake, plasma membrane recycling, antigen presentation, intracellular signal, transduction, the removal of aged or dead cells from the body, and the defense against microbes. So you got to see, these things do a lot more than you might think. And I'm going to move on now. I just wanted to point out that yet another calorie restriction mimetic does seem to reverse aging in at least one system of, well, a fruit fly. So I've talked about Dr. Rhonda Patrick in the past, and I highly recommend people subscribe to her on YouTube, on Found My Fitness, all of the Found My Fitness channels. And I also highly recommend people visit her website, subscribe to her newsletter, all that jazz. But this is the thing. So let's take a look at the transcription here. So Dr. Rhonda Patrick here, blah, blah, blah. Oh, man, what the hell's this?
So Bruce is the professor emeritus, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so let's see here. Here he's going to talk. Here, let's read the summary here. In this video, Dr. Patrick interviews Dr. Bruce Ames about his triage theory, which he proposes that the body has developed a rationing response to shortages of micronutrients throughout evolution. When cells run out of a vitamin or mineral, that scarce micronutrient is allotted to proteins essential or for short-term survival. Proteins needed for long-term health, including those that protect DNA, lose out and become disabled and lead to the diseases of aging. In addition, they discuss how recommended daily allowances are chosen and what Bruce calls longevity vitamins, which he calls a class of nutrients that exist mostly to prevent degenerative diseases of aging, in addition to essential vitamins and minerals. Okay, so the obese are eating the worst diet in the country. If you define worse as ratio of calories to essential micronutrients, they're just eating empty calories. Vitamin D is a steroid hormone, and it's controlling 1,000 genes, lots of them in your brain. So if you're vitamin D deficient, you're in deep trouble. Okay. So this here's the long form, okay? You got to remember that you need micronutrients, you need protein, you need these things for your body to function properly. If you don't have the right nutrients, you're not going to have your body operating optimally, okay? So, in my opinion, optimizing nutrition is as important or more important than reduction in calories. So, evolution has equipped us with a triage mechanism. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the triage theory posits that during evolution, as a result of periods of shortage of micronutrients required by various proteins for function, nature selects organisms capable of rebalancing their metabolism. This rebalancing ensures survival of the organism at the expense of a healthy metabolic state, which results in accumulation of insidious damage, leading to longer-term consequences mentioned above, including chronic diseases of aging. That nature may have developed such a system is logically consistent with the consensus that natural selection favors short-term survival for reproduction over long-term health. There is, for example, a known triage between organs. If you are short of iron, the body takes it out of your liver, okay, before the heart, because if the iron is taken from the heart, the body will die. And one of the long-term consequences is DNA damage, which is relatively unimportant when one is starving, but can result in cancer after a delay of 20 years. Over the millions of years of evolutionary time up till now, micronutrient shortages were likely to be very common. For example, the 15 essential minerals are not distributed evenly on the earth. Dietary sources and available also fluctuated markedly. Okay, micronutrient intakes below recommended levels are unusually widespread in poor countries, but also in developed countries in all segments of society, especially the poor, children, adolescents, the obese, and the elderly. High consumption of calorie-rich, micronutrient-poor, unbalanced diets. So how much of a calorically restricted diet is because of the caloric restriction, and how much of it is because of the optimal nutrition? Generally speaking, when you're eating a calorie-poor diet, you're eating a micronutrient-rich diet, unless you're starving yourself. But generally speaking, if you're eating things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, lean proteins, fish, these things, you're eating a diet that's extremely high in micronutrients, but very low in calories. Okay, so over half of the U.S. population has inadequate intakes of magnesium, for instance, and almost all African Americans have extremely low vitamin D levels. Much of the population suffers a lack in a variety of other micronutrients such as omega-3 fatty acids, potassium, calcium, vitamin C, vitamin E, and vitamin K. The results can be damaging to the body when the supply of vitamin K is limited, as it is in the typical Western diet. The body uses what little it can find to protect critical metabolic functions in the liver. Unfortunately, that leaves other vitamin K dependent proteins, the ones associated with bone building, cancer prevention, and protecting the heart from atherosclerosis, without sufficient vitamin K to function properly. The result leaves the body at a risk of developing age-related diseases like cancer, heart disease, and osteoporosis. Okay, so essentially what is being said here is when you lack certain micronutrients, certain fatty acids, certain amino acids, you're going to get the long-term, even if you're getting enough to stave off deficiency syndromes, you're going to eventually suffer from age-related diseases. So the triage theory predicts that the pathology is insidious, but we believe that it is measurable. They hypothesized that two of the many possibly measurable consequences of moderate micronutrient deficiency are increased DNA damage, future cancer, and mitochondrial decay, mutagenic oxidant release, future cancer, and cognitive dysfunction as results of a triage response. Risk of diseases such as cardiovascular disease and immune dysfunction is also increased by micronutrient deficiencies. Now, what's interesting about what Dr. Ames has essentially proven here is that this is exactly what people like Dr. Adele, well, I don't know if she's a doctor, but like Adele Davis, the dietitian that wrote the books on nutrition and cooking properly and all that, like Let's Eat Right to Keep Fit in those books. This is exactly what Dr. Atkins has talked about. This is exactly what Dr. Kenneth Cooper has talked about. This is exactly what a lot of people, exactly what Dr. Linus Pauling talked about, exactly what Dr. Abraham Hoffer talked about. This has been shown in clinic time and time again, and explains why people with certain conditions improve when put on nutrient regimens, despite the fact that they do not have deficiency disorders, okay? So it is common for proteins to become deformed with age. For example, membranes become stiffer from oxidation, deforming membrane proteins, particularly in mitochondria. These age-related changes often result in proteins which have a decreased binding affinity for the vitamin-dependent coenzyme, okay? Various lines of evidence suggest that healthier lives are to be gained by optimizing our metabolism. More attention to balanced diets and optimizing micronutrient intake could have a major effect on delaying the degenerative diseases. So again, how much of the benefit of a calorie-restricted, optimally nutritious diet is from the calorie restriction, and how much is from the optimized nutrition? That's a question. I think that's an important question. So, prolonging healthy aging, longevity, vitamins, and proteins. It is proposed that proteins, enzymes, that proteins, enzymes be classified into two classes according to their essentiality for immediate survival and reproduction and their function in long-term health. That is, survival proteins versus longevity proteins as proposed by the triage theory. A modest deficiency of one of the nutrients / cofactors triggers a built-in rationing mechanism that favors the proteins needed for immediate survival and reproduction. Okay, so however, while sacrificing those needed to protect against future damage, longevity proteins, impairment of the function of longevity proteins results in an insidious acceleration of the risk of diseases associated with aging. This is Bruce Ames, proposed that nutrients required for the function of longevity proteins constitute a class of vitamins that are here named longevity vitamins. He suggests that many such nutrients play a dual role for both survival and longevity. The evidence for classifying taurine as a conditional vitamin and the following 10 compounds as putative longevity vitamins is reviewed. The fungal antioxidant ergothioneine, the bacterial metabolites pyroquoline, quinone, and cunine, and the plant antioxidant carotenoids lutein, zeaxanthin, lycopene, alpha and beta carotene, beta-cryptoxanthin, and the marine carotenoid astaxanthin. Because nutrient deficiencies are highly prevalent in the United States and elsewhere, appropriate supplementation and or improved diet could reduce much of the consequent risk of chronic disease and premature aging. He proposes that an optimal level of many of the known 30 vitamins and essential minerals / elements, plus the 11 new putative vitamins described described herein is necessary for promoting healthy aging. The triage theory had previously introduced the concept that proteins/enzymes that are sacrificed for the short term or with a shortage are necessary for supporting long-term health. This insight is being broadened here to classify also many vitamins and minerals as necessary for supporting long-term health. He presents evidence that the deficiency of many vitamins and minerals specifically increases the risk of future disease and shortens the lifespan. Deficiencies in vitamins and minerals. Approximately 30 vitamins and minerals are cofactors necessary for metabolism to function properly, and were discovered because severe dietary deficiencies were linked to serious adverse health effects. They include vitamins A, B1, B2, B6, B12, biotin, vitamin C, choline, vitamin D, vitamin E, folic acid, vitamin K, niacin, pantothenate, and the minerals and elements calcium, chloride, chromium, cobalt, copper, iodine, iron, manganese, magnesium, molybdenum, phosphorus, potassium, selenium, sodium, sulfur, and zinc. Some additional important nutrients, the marine omega-3 fatty acids, DHA and EPA, are discussed here. Although they are not known as vitamins, 9 essential dietary amino acids are also important for the synthesis of proteins and hormones, but will not be discussed. Now keep that in mind. The 9 essential dietary amino acids are also important. Don't forget that. Because these low-protein fad dietists, you got to be careful, okay? Most of the world's population, even in the developed countries, consume many of the vitamins and minerals at levels below those recommended. So keep that in mind. Even in developed countries like the United States, many people consume vitamin and mineral levels at levels below these recommended, using as reference the estimated average requirement values, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the following numbers are given as examples of the high percentage of the United States population ingestion of vitamin and mineral quantities below the, the recommended whatever. So, okay, fortification of vitamin D, 70%, vitamin E, 60%, magnesium, 45%, calcium, 38%, vitamin K, 35%, vitamin A, 34%, vitamin C, 25%, zinc, 8%, vitamin B6, 8%, folate, 8%. Intakes of marine omega-3 fatty acids, DHA, are also remarkably low in the United States. Population, blah, 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 as I said, okay. The association of causality between various diseases of aging and a number of vitamin and mineral deficiencies is analyzed here by screening the literature and using the criteria clinical trials triage theory. The triage theory, we've already been through this. Okay. Rethinking vitamins, longevity, proteins, and vitamins. Vitamins and essential minerals are usually thought of as compounds crucial for survival or protection against severe ill health, as shown by their dramatic short-term effect upon removal from the diet. Most are necessary for critical metabolic functions. The role of vitamins in healthy aging has been less appreciated. He is introducing two concepts inherent in the triage rationing metabolism: longevity proteins and survival proteins. Among the insights derived from the triage theory are the following concepts. Not all proteins and enzymes are affected equally by vitamins and mineral deficiencies. Not all vitamin and minerals are exclusively needed for short-term survival. Adequate vitamin and minerals throughout life plays an important role in healthy aging. He proposes that during triage rationing, proteins that are sacrificed to allow for survival belong to a category with the specific function of protecting against diseases of aging. He proposes to name them longevity proteins in contrast to those needed for short-term survival and reproduction, and thus preferentially supplied with a vitamin and mineral necessary for the function, besides being also necessary. Longevity vitamins. A redefinition of vitamins emerges from the definition of longevity proteins, the concept that dietary compounds needed for function of longevity proteins belong to a special category. These are ones that you don't necessarily need to protect from deficiency syndromes, but are necessary for long-term health. So, the shortage of which result in damage. Thus, vitamins may be divided into two general categories, supporting both survival and longevity proteins, as defined above, and thus subject to triage rationing, supporting health without emphasis on early survival, but with shortage leading continuously to accelerated aging. Okay. In addition, he proposes that an important consequence of this insight is the likely existence of compounds that are needed only for longevity and therefore are not essential for short-term survival. Survival vitamins and minerals that are also longevity vitamins and minerals. Inherent, okay, blah, blah, blah. Thus, these vitamins and minerals have two effects on short-term survival and long-term health, besides examples of vitamin K and selenium as being both essential and longevity vitamins. Three additional examples are vitamin D, marine omega-3 fatty acids, and magnesium. Okay, vitamin D levels are inadequate in 70% of the United States population. Almost all dark-skinned people residing in the northern latitudes are particularly deficient. Vitamin D was long considered responsible only for protecting against rickets, but it has now been shown to be involved in a myriad of functions, a cholesterol derivative, blah, blah, blah. About 2,700 such binding sites have been found in the human genome, so it's important for gene expression. The vitamin D receptor protein, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Supplementation with vitamin D, which would prevent and relieve some of these problems, has been discouraged for two reasons: fear of toxicity in older studies and numerous inadequate clinical trials. Newer evidence on the effect of vitamin D on all-cause mortality supersedes these toxicity studies, concluding that there was no increased risk even when blood levels of 20... Okay, so the use of randomized clinical trial... Okay. Marine omega-3s, the intake of these compounds is inadequate in most of the United States population. Low EPA and low DHA in red blood cells were found to be associated with increased all-cause mortality in a study of 6,501 elderly women, followed by DHA and EPA are present in high levels in the central nervous system and are important for brain and retinal structure. Low blood levels of DHA and EPA have been shown in a 5-year study to be associated with a faster rate of telomere shortening. Magnesium is present in the center. Okay, a recent review. In conclusion, these three examples of vitamins and minerals deficiencies, together with the vitamin K, selenium, okay. Conditional vitamins. A conditional vitamin is synthesized by the body, but not at a level that is sufficient to optimize metabolism. Choline. Choline was the first example of a conditional vitamin. Only 11% of women achieve the recommended intake, and average intakes for the population are half to two-thirds of this recommendation. Severe choline deficiency results in DNA strand breaks. Taurine is another example of a conditional vitamin because it is synthesized by animals, including humans, but not in sufficient amounts. It has been shown to be important in preventing numerous health problems such as cardiovascular disease, brain function, diabetes, and mitochondrial diseases, as summarized below. Because of taurine's extensive involvement in health problems that lead to long-term damage, it is proposed here that it is also a longevity vitamin. The synthesis of taurine involves cysteine, okay. Virtually all human tissues, okay. Most taurine is acquired from the diet, mainly from fish and other seafood, seaweed, eggs, and dark meat poultry. Taurine is particularly important in the mitochondria, where it is present as, okay, mitochondrial tRNA, okay. Another possibility, okay. So taurine supplementation lowers blood pressure, improves vascular function, raises plasma hydrogen sulfide levels. Taurine consumption was the most significant factor associated with reduced risk of ischemic heart disease in 2 international epidemiological studies. Taurine plays an important role in brain development, including neuronal proliferation, stem cell proliferation, and differentiation. Diabetic remediation by taurine has been reviewed previously. Its supplementation remediates diabetic pathologies, including retinopathy, neuropathy, nephropathy, which is the death of the kidneys, cardiopathy, atherosclerosis, altered platelet aggregation, and endothelial dysfunction. Taurine is important for fetal development. Taurine is well established as an important conditional vitamin for survival functions and for healthy longevity. Putative longevity, okay, so he proposes that many of the known vitamins and minerals have, besides a survival function, aging delaying longevity function as well. He proposes that other dietary biochemicals not officially recognized as vitamins or having age-delaying functions have a positive age-delaying effect. Several such compounds are discussed as candidates for putative longevity vitamins: the fungal antioxidant ergothioneine, the bacterial compound quinone, and quinine, and 7 plant carotenoids. Among these putative longevity vitamins are specialized dietary antioxidants that reduce the accumulation of long-term oxidative damage and are not normally classified as survival vitamins. It should be noted that within this category, vitamin C is categorized as a survival vitamin because in addition to being an antioxidant, it also functions as a cofactor for survival proteins. On the other hand, vitamin E is a fat-soluble free radical scavenger chain breaking antioxidant and is not required for any known protein/enzyme functions. Neither are discussed further. Other important functions besides protecting against oxidation are associated with longevity, and the mechanisms by which the body prevents insidious aging-related damage are likely to be numerous. Ergothioneine, is present in the human diet. It is synthesized by most mushrooms, cyanobacteria, and many types of soil bacteria, but not by plants or animals. Various plant foods contain small amounts taken up from the soil. Animals that eat such plants contain this in their flesh. The edible fungi. Okay. It has been shown to be present in almost all human cell tissue, often at millimolar levels in the brain, bone marrow, lens and cornea of the eye, okay, where it appears to play a significant role as an antioxidant. Okay, its levels decrease significantly with age, past age 80, and significantly lower levels were found in individuals with mild cognitive impairment. Okay, in mammals it's taken up by a specialized transporter, blah, blah, blah. What you'll notice is a lot of this, pretty much all of it, results in oxidative damage and DNA damage. Okay, so pyrroloquinoline, quinone, is made by many species of bacteria, but not by animals or plants. It is a cofactor for several bacterial dehydrogenases, such as glucose and methanol dehydrogenase. It is synthesized by soil bacteria, enters plants from the soil, and thus enters the human diet. It is detected in every sample of fruits and vegetables tested at levels of 5 to 10 times higher than in human tissue fluids. The health benefits of PQQ in humans have been reviewed recently, including for diabetes, antioxidant activity, neuroprotective cognition, and lowering the levels of C-reactive protein. It has repeatedly suggested that to be a vitamin, although arguments have been raised against it. Okay, quinine is an evolutionarily ancient compound, present in bacteria, which are unique to the detectable amounts of have been identified in tomatoes, wheat, coconut water, and milk from humans, cows, and goats. Humans and mice recover quinine from either ingested food or the gut flora. All meaning all multicellular organisms, including humans, convert this to something else, cutis or whatever, by placing it in the wobble position of several tRNAs, aspartic acid, aspartagine, histidine, and tyrosine. Quinine deficiency, uptake, and function have been reviewed. It is notable that eukaryotes have retained a number of dedicated proteins for the utilization, which include a conserved mitochondrial tRNA. Okay. The finding is located at the wobble. Carotenoids. There are 600 or more carotenoids synthesized by plants but not by animals. They act as antioxidant pigments in all plants and usually contain 11 conjugated double bonds, which accounts for their yellow, orange, red colors. All photosynthetic plants synthesize carotenoids to quench singlet oxygen, a highly energetic and toxic form of oxygen created in cells by strong light. The toxicity of singlet oxygen is due to its ability to oxidize proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids, which can lead to cell death. The extra singlet oxygen energy is dissipated as heat via the long chain of conjugated double bonds in these compounds. They mimic enzymes in that one molecule of carotenoid can destroy hundreds of molecules. Okay, the following 6 carotenoids account for 95% of carotenoids found in the United States blood, the American blood and brain: lutein, xanthan, lycopene, alpha and beta carotene, and beta cryptoxanthin. The importance for health of a 7th carotenoid, the powerful marine carotenoid astaxanthin, which contains 13 conjugated double bonds, is also discussed. These are increasingly being accepted as vitamin-like nutrients. There is good evidence that these carotenoids help to optimize a healthy lifespan. How intake of these carotenoids has been associated with all-cause mortality, macular degeneration, and associated blindness, cognitive decline, cardiovascular disease, various types of cancer, metabolic syndrome, oxidative damage to DNA, high blood pressure, hearing loss, decreased visual acuity, inflammation, immune decay, and cognitive decay. It is well known that alpha and beta carotene and beta cryptoxanthin are precursors of vitamin A. Thus, some of the health effects upon their deficiency may be due to insufficient vitamin A. Transcription of their chemical nature and properties, together with a summary of the analysis of its carotenoids, are included among prolonging good health while aging is an important issue in the world with large increases of in life expectancy. Mechanistic, genetic, and epidemiological evidence suggests that the metabolic trade-off occurring with vitamins and mineral shortage results in an accumulation of insidious damage and aging-associated diseases. He proposes that the relatively simple approach of securing sufficient intake of well-known dietary vitamins and minerals, plus taurine, plus the 10 putative longevity vitamins introduced here, could lead to healthy aging by tuning up the metabolism. Vitamin mineral deficiencies, as indicated by intakes below. Okay. So one more time. How much of the benefits of a optimally nutritious diet are like a calorically restricted, optimally nourishing diet are due to the caloric restriction, and how much due to the optimal nutrition? That's a question that needs to be asked. So when I continue with my next video, what will that be? Part 4, I guess it'll be. I will be talking about Mr. Hofmekler's approach to exercise and the role of exercise on the human body. It'll begin with effects of exercise on cellular and tissue aging. And that'll be all for this video.